What is up, internet world, and welcome back to the channel. Today I bring you the 2023 Nissan Z. With a 3-liter twin turbo that makes 400 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque, and that is up from the last gen that made 350 horsepower and 276 pound-feet of torque. Now they say power comes on at about 1800 RPM. That means it has a small turbo, really good around the city. This thing has got a 6-speed transmission. I've got an S button that allows me to rev match, and I will shut that thing off because I like to drive myself. Let's go. Pretty good. Two things I noticed. One is the car's really smooth. The suspension is smooth. It's not jerky at all. Even going through the gears, I don't feel a lot of lift, but at the same time, I don't feel it being overly stiff. The second portion of it is this second gear. I feel like second has a bit of a notch to it. It's not like a buttery smooth kind of engagement. Nonetheless, Japanese sports cars are not really designed to go straight in a straight line. This isn't the Camaro with a V8. This isn't a V8 like the domestics that sound beastly. This thing is quiet, a little too quiet, which is disappointing considering that the G35 that was the same platform back in the day sounded so good. It's just not that exhilarating sounding. Let's take it around corners. Ooh, that's good. Ooh, yes. This stability program is perfect. Even when you launch it and it slightly loses a little bit of grip, it'll still not cut power hard. It's like a light cut power source. Definitely not like a Mercedes-Benz. This thing is really good. It's almost as good, if not almost as good as the BMW product in terms of cutting power and stability program. It doesn't totally cut it off, it just leaves it on so you can go around corners, have a little bit of fun with it. It's like a tease. So we can talk about history. In 1969, the original 240Z, the first Z ever to come to North America, was launched. And that thing was beautiful. Long hood, nice fastback, similar to what this looks like, with its heritage vibes on the back, sleek, retro feel, which I love. But most people talk about the 370Z that hasn't been around for 3 years, that was launched 11 years ago. People even talk about the fact that this chassis was launched in 2002. Yep, this 2023 model has a 2002 chassis. But all that doesn't matter to me, because when I think about this, all I think about is the caviar eating, Ritz-Carlton staying, Gucci wearing, older brother, the G35. When that thing was launched, I absolutely loved it because of the sound. It wasn't the looks of it that got me, it was the sound. Those exhausts, they ran that thing until they sold out. That's all people would talk about, was the exhaust. And if you don't know what that car was, well, Google it and you will find out. It doesn't sound anything like this. And the differences are, one is a 4-seater or 2+2, and this is a full-out 2-seater. That's the only difference. So I always say that insurance is always cheaper when you buy a G35 at that time. So even though it shares the same chassis from 2002, everything about this car has been redesigned, upped, and changed, including an upgraded interior. Now the starting price in Canada is about $47,000 of a sport trim, and that competes against the Camaro, Challenger, and of course, the Mustang. People do put it against a Supra because it kind of has that Supra look, kind of feels that way a little bit. It used to compare against something a little bit lower like a Miata back in the day, because if you wanted to compete on a higher trim, they would talk about the Infiniti. And that is for the base trim. If you want to add automatic, the 9-speed, it costs about $1,500 more. And if you load it up like this one is, it's about $59,000 in a manual and about $60,000 in the automatic, but that's not it. There's something called the Proto, aka the prototype, that was launched in 2020, and that is $5,000 more. It's got yellow paint, yellow brakes, and a few other tidbits. $65,000 for a Nissan Z. That's a lot of moolah. We do this road about 10 times a month, and I can tell you that this road is fairly bumpy, but in this, it is smooth. they've really improved the feeling of the car. It just feels better quality in terms of my steering input. It comes right back to center. The suspension is soft, as I mentioned. It doesn't feel stiff by any means. I could feel like I'm in a four-door sedan. It doesn't feel sportiness, and unfortunately there's no button I can stiffen up the suspension. It's just the way it is, and that's a bit different in my opinion, especially when you got all these gauges blasting at you with this turbo speed and boost and differential oil and engine oil pressure. I mean, I like all that stuff. It's cool. It really looks good on paper, but at the same time it needs to be a little bit stiffer, or at least have that ability to stiffen it up. So let's talk about this transmission, namely first and second that have been updated or replaced, is what Nissan have said. But I will say that the synchros are hard to get in. I'll just show you. I'll go from first to second, not totally spirited, but enthusiastically, and see how fast it takes me to go from first to second, as fast as I can possibly do it. Third is better, but first to second, there is that delay. It should be easier, shorter, less synchro heavy. And I thought this was just on the inside of the car, but listening on the outside, it's almost as bland. So here's second gear, 25 RPM, foot on the ground. Good. Starts fading. Yeah, after 6,000 RPM, it just feels like it's just going through the motions, or the turbo is completely out of pressure and it just fades hard. Even though the turbo speed is still high, it just feels like it doesn't pull like a train. So to the controversial front end, people don't really like it. They love the back, just like me, and I'll get to that in a second. So let's start off with these headlights. They are heritage, they're vintage, they're 240Z right here. They're circular. That's why these LEDs aren't just projectors. They have DRLs and indicators right on the top and on the bottom in amber. So if you do move to the front, you can see it's very boxy, very shark-like. They even have a wine glass silhouette molded in this aluminum front hood. Now the one thing I would change, because this is a Z, I would probably have Nissan change this front logo emblem. It's just so Nissan Rogue, which totally sucks on something so cool. It kind of looks like a grown-up BRZ in some respects. The front end is just a bit questionable in my opinion. I do like it. All right, let's pop this hood here. What? Come on, 60 G's and you gotta do one of these things? And this is where I wake up, the side. Finally, look at the styling. The styling is money. Money. And because this is raised off the old generation, it is 10.8% stiffer. They have upgraded suspension, you have raised wheels, you have 2 piston calipers in the front, single piston in the back. You have nice sticky tires, and they are wider than the normal one when you get a performance trim, which is what this one is. You also get a mechanical rear differential so that the power can try to actually hold in the rear, because this is only rear-wheel drive. If you bought an Infiniti, it would be all-wheel drive because they share the same engine, Nissan Infiniti. Now, this does have a lot of aluminum. You've got an aluminum hood, you've got aluminum doors, and you have an aluminum trunk lid. They also have moved the Z from there to this guy in the new generation. I would really advise Nissan to ditch these tires. These S007s aren't good. Nothing beats the 4Ss. The Pilot Sport 4Ss are the best tire ever. And people just don't understand how much a tire makes a big difference. Now they've left some old pieces from the last generation, including this door handle, because they want to keep the vibe the same. But they've added some new tech, like this little small button here. That is to lock and unlock the doors. When you push the button and the key's in your pocket, you can walk away. They do have this nice side skirt, and they have this silver piece that kind of changes the look of it. But I do really like it because the back end for me is money, including this monster gas cap. Look how big this thing is. It's huge, but who cares? This thing looks like Eleanor from the back, almost, for way less money, because Eleanor is like $1 million today, and this thing is 60. So because this is a 2-seater, the trunk of the Nissan Z actually has a lot of room, because they've moved the rear strut tower brace from above the rear wheels to right here, so you have more room in the trunk. And when you open up this aluminum trunk lid, you will notice that it has one of the prettiest rear ends I've ever seen in a coupe, because retro is in. This is the best part of this car, and I'm not saying that because it's my dig. It's everybody worldwide loves the rear of this Nissan Z. So when they market this thing, all they really show is the booty. Now take a look at these taillights. They're retro, they're cool, they're modern, and they work in 2023. Now moving down, you obviously have the Nissan badge, which I wish they would change up a little bit in my opinion. I like the Z, it is wild, it is sick, and I love this black panel that goes across the middle there. Moving along down, you obviously see the manufacturer plate, because this is a manufacturer car, this is not a subscriber, but if you, subscriber, have a car that you want us to review, please let us know, and we will gladly take it off your hands. We're looking for a McLaren. Thanks for coming. Now on the bottom here, you have these exhausts that have little perforations in them to sort of tweak the sound of them, which is ultra weird because these exhausts, well, take a listen. Whenever I get in this thing, I always want to say, this is a 350, 370, 400Z, but now it's just a Z all by itself, which means this is probably the last Z we'll ever see, because the next one will be EZ. What have they changed inside? They've only really updated a few tiny things, like this vent here is from the old generation. These buttons and switches are from a Subaru. There's still a lot less plastic in this than the last generation. They have modernized the dash. They have this 12.3-inch display with a Z right there from Zorro from 2005. This is an 8-inch display. It's a 9-inch if you get nav. It's not very good, but not very bad either. Just very basic, general. You have Sirius XM, you can rewind it. There are hard buttons underneath. There is a tuning knob and a volume knob, so that's nice to see. There's not a lot of piano black, with the exception of the steering wheel right here that actually has these buttons that illuminate only when the car is on. Otherwise, it's just pure black. So I do like the fact that it's modernized in the right pieces. The HVAC controls are strictly knobs, very, very basic, but they work. They will not break, which is probably an important piece, just like the BRZ. That's where it's tough, right? Because the Supra interior is actually a lot nicer. This is kind of like a better version of a BRZ, in my personal opinion. I like that you have 3 gauges up here, and it's very driver focused. It looks only at me. The passenger probably can't even see them. They are black-faced gauges. You have your boost, your turbo speed, and then your battery voltage up there. Down here in the driver's display, you have your water temperature, oil temp, and then a massive tach, which is a really nice touch. You have different modes on this display, but the sport display is the only display I would have. The other one kind of looks like a Nissan Rogue, to be honest, if I'm not gonna lie. It does feel a little bit claustrophobic, but that's kind of normal with these cars with these sloped roof lines. There is no sunroof because you can get different colors. And on the inside, speaking of colors, you can get different colors. You can get blue, black with yellow, black with red, kind of cool, funky things that you can't really get in other cars. So it's a nice touch that you can get it. Unfortunately, this one is gray on the outside, black on the inside, so it's kind of bland. Now it does have something silly. There is a button that says S mode, and when you touch it, nothing happens. I was hitting this button yesterday and I'm like, nothing's happening, until I realized you have to hold it down for 5 seconds and then it takes away your automatic or rev matching, basically, shifting, so you don't have to hit the gas when you're downshifting. It automatically does it for you. S mode. Anyways, there's a start and stop right next to it, but there's no wireless charging. There's USB and USB-C, which is cool to have, but no wireless charging in a 2023? Kind of lame, man. You do have 2 cup holders, one right here, push this button and you get another one right here. Now this does slide backwards and forwards with a nice touch, and it is a soft material, so your elbow doesn't hurt when you have it here. And the good thing about this specific car is that when you're shifting gears, there's no other buttons you hit. There's some brands out there, when you're shifting gears, it hits a button down here in the center console. This does not do it. This is very good. It's clean, it's easy. You can't hit these heated seats buttons in the front. There's no air conditioning seats, even though these are slightly perforated of sorts. These seats are good. They kind of hold you in. They could be a little bit better. They have the same buttons as they had in 2005 on the Infinities, where you can slide backwards and forwards, go back and forth. That is unchanged. They even had in the last model. That is not changed. You can tilt the seat this way. That is manual. That is not automatic. When I first got into it, I said, man, like this seat should go higher. And I'm sitting at the highest possible level, and my eyes are directly in the middle of the windshield, which is where they should be. My hand steering is perfect, but this seat is as high as it can go. So if you're under 5'9", you will probably have a problem sitting in this car. If you are 6'3", 6'4", you will have no problem because the seat goes all the way down and all the way back. Because remember, this is a 2-seater, not a 2+2. There's nothing in the back except for one big trunk. Now, the one thing I would change is because it has a small glass and these cars have small cockpits, is this massive rear view mirror. It's because it has HomeLink, it is larger, but it's so big. They should put a smaller one here so I could see behind, but not have this basically take up 3/4 of my windshield. Although there's a lot of cost cutting in here, there's not as much plastic as I would have expected. To be honest, you have a really, really soft armrest for your elbow on the driver's door panel. So where there is plastic, it's not cheap plastic, it's actually decent quality plastic. And they have wrapped a lot of stuff. Even around this is wrapped, this is not plastic. So yes, they have improved it a little bit from the last generation, but we're not here for the interior, we're here for the drive. And as far as the drive goes, because this is manual transmission, you have a carbon fiber drive shaft. Power will turn off, save battery. Nice. And the automatic transmission is actually a nice speed from Mercedes-Benz. That's cool. The one thing I'm interested to see is tuning this car. The tuning capability is going to be huge with the fact that it's got the V6 twin turbo in it, and this thing has a carbon fiber drive shaft. You can beat the snot out of it. Now, they have obviously upgraded first and second just to take that type of torque that this thing produces now. So cool, but how much torque can it take? We will find out. Maybe that's why they're so tough. But this thing definitely can't be a drag car in any way, shape, or form. Not that it's meant to be that way, but when people see rear-wheel drive, this kind of power, they're obviously going to run it through its numbers and do that, and it's going to be judged by that number. So this does 0 to 60 in about 4.5 seconds, and it kind of feels that way. But when you see 400 horsepower, and it's a 2-seater car, a sports coupe, that does 4.5 seconds, 0 to 100, you would think it could do a little bit more, considering an Audi RS3 does it in 4 seconds, and it makes pretty much the same horsepower. And it's 4 doors, a sedan. This is a Z. So that leads me to where the world is going. I had a talk to a bunch of high school kids in grade 12, and I asked them, how many of you guys know how to drive manual transmission? And out of 37 kids, not one knew how to drive one. So that probably makes sense why a car like this exists. It looks awesome on the outside, rear end, has that iconic brand from the Zs from years ago, 1969. In here has all the tech you need, has digital displays, has gauges to get that retro feel. You can get it in a 6-speed, I don't know how many they'll sell. The automatic has launch control. So maybe this is a buy for the kids of 2023. But for someone like me, I don't know if I can pull the trigger on something like this. I really love the way the outside looks. It's just the drive, I feel like, has to be updated. I feel like I would take it and I would buy the stripped base sport model and I would put some money into it and make it the car for me. Because out of the box, it just doesn't quite cut it for what I like. But hey, that's why the world is great. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.